justice and peace and equality.
Game Changers Magazine, Game Changers Media Network, Voices of the Village podcast, and I'm back with attorney James Mays celebrating 50 years legal aid as an attorney. I mean, man, phenomenal story. We talked about CAU, we talked about how you got here, we talked about, passing the bar back in 1974, but you mentioned something in the last tape where you were fighting discrimination lawsuits. Mm-hmm. I think it was on behalf of Clark Atlanta University?
No, I went to work for the EEOC.
The EEOC, okay.
Yeah, in
okay.
Atlanta, with the federal government.
With the federal government, okay.
Right, and I spent a couple of years with them bringing lawsuits against companies that were discriminating racially and sexually in all kinds of ways.
Okay.
So that's what I did for a couple of years when I left Clark.
When you left, were you teaching at Clark at that time while you were working at EEOC?
No.
Okay.
I left Clark after 2 years, and then went with the EEOC for 2 years.
Okay. So while working with the EEOC, you defeated this large company that represented a company out of New York who had attorneys in St. Louis. And this company you worked for over 30 years.
For 30 years.
For 30 years, okay.
Exactly, to the day.
To the day. Yeah. Now, how did you feel when you defeat this company hands on?
Okay. My thought at that time was that I wasn't certain that the federal government was really doing the job that they needed to do to make sure that black people were getting into jobs where they really could be effective. In other words, they were getting into the lower level kind of jobs. They were opening up jobs for that, but that top rung, vice president, president type of levels, they weren't getting to that.
Right.
So I thought, okay, well, maybe the way to do that is not to sue them and try to force them to do it, but to get inside of them.
Wow.
And see if something could be done from the inside.
Right.
If you're hiring, then you can hire people that you want to hire.
That's right.
It's that kind of thing. And so I left the EEOC and went with one of the world's largest fashion companies.
Okay.
The 5th largest fashion company in the United States and the 12th largest fashion company in the world.
Oh, wow.
At $3 billion in sales. That was 20 years ago. They had $3 billion in sales. So I don't know what they're doing today.
$3 billion in sales, and you're a legal attorney for this company.
Right.
Over the course of those 30 years, what type of challenges did you see? What type of, your history was fighting for, establishing like social justice. Like I see a lot of social justice fight in your walk. But what stood out to you the most in St. Louis for the firm that you worked with that that was pivotal for you?
Okay, that's a good question, and I hope that one day you'll be able to read one of my books where I write about this.
Right.
And I've written 3 books. One about my time at Clark Atlanta University, and one about my time at this corporation.
Okay.
And one is a constitutional law book.
Okay.
And the one that is about this corporation that you're asking about is you can get that through Amazon, by the way.
Okay.
So go.
And what's the name of that book?
The Long Journey Home.
Okay.
By James C. Mays, A Black Man's Life in Corporate America.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, and so what inspired you to write? Tell us behind that book.
And once I had been with this corporation a couple of years on their legal staff, I was asked if I would like to learn our business from the ground up. And I was it was the fashion business. We were making clothes, selling clothes to all of the major companies in America, like Polo, just all of them.
Okay.
And so I was given an opportunity. Mr. Mays, you could be our first black vice president of one of our divisions, first president of one of our divisions, but you're going to have to go out and learn our business.
Okay.
So they said that's going to take 7 years.
Right.
For you to do that.
Okay.
So in January of 1977, I left St. Louis as a lawyer.
Okay.
And went to Asheville, North Carolina, to work in one of our factories.
Wow.
And my first job was as a sewing machine operator.
Okay. Okay.
So I went in a three-piece suit. didn't know what I was going to be doing at the time.
Right. Right.
And I learned quickly, though, that the next day I came back, I was in blue jeans.
You was in blue jeans.
And I was told that when you can make a pair of pants that your wife can wear,
Okay.
you can stop sewing. And so every day I would sit down with the ladies who were sewing clothes.
Okay.
And we just sewed and sewed. Eventually, after several months, I was able to make a pair of pants.
Okay. Okay.
And so my next job was the sewing machine mechanic.
Okay.
They said, you're going to fix these machines that you've been sewing on.
Right. Right. Right.
So I learned, I walked around with the other machinists until I learned how to fix a machine, how it operated,
Okay.
how it worked. And then they told me, you're going to learn how to make fabric and
Okay.
thread, but we're going to send you to North Carolina State University,
Right.
and you're going to learn how they make fabric. And so I went to North Carolina State University, and they made fabric.
Okay.
And when I got back from that, learning how they do that, they put me on what they call a cutting table.
Okay.
That's where they spread the fabric out and cut it, and then move it on to the sewing machines.
Okay.
So I don't know how long I was there, but eventually after about 6 months at that factory, they called me up and said, Mr. Mays, you're going to be leaving next week for Mississippi.
Uh-huh.
Now this was in 1977.
Okay.
And I was going to Mississippi to work as a black man in management in a Mississippi factory.
Okay. Oh, wow. Yeah. Wow.
So it was kind of,
Yeah.
I didn't know what to expect.
Man.
But I went to Mississippi, and they were making shirts.
Okay.
And they said, okay, you're going to be what they call an engineer.
Okay.
In other words, you're going to determine how we decide to pay somebody for making a shirt. And you go around with a stopwatch, and you time the time that it makes. And then based on that, you set a salary rate.
Okay.
And you set up the factory. All the work that had to be done in the factory to make it run, that's what the engineer does, and you're going to do that. So I was there probably another 6 months.
Okay.
And then they said, came and said, you're going to Louisiana.
Okay. Okay.
6 months after that. And so I went to Independence, Louisiana, a little country town.
Okay.
And down there they were making pants. And so I was an assistant plant manager there for about a year.
Okay.
And I was living in Baton Rouge, working in Independence, which is about 50 miles apart.
Okay. Okay.
And there's a long story about this, but when I went to Independence, I was just told, Mr. Mays, you can't live here. No, by the people who own the apartments and everything. They said, sorry. But they said, we'll build you a house.
Okay.
But you can't live in these apartments here in Independence, Louisiana.
Okay.
So I drove 50 miles every day to Baton Rouge.
Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Okay.
Yeah, where my wife and I were able to rent an apartment.
And why do you think you weren't able to live in?
They didn't let black people live in apartments with white people in 1977 in Independence. So I said, I know you're a lawyer, and I know you're from up north, and you all do things a little different, but no, you're not going to live in our apartment. So I was driving back and forth 50 miles each way every day to Baton Rouge.
Wow.
So after being there a year, they moved me back to another Mississippi location.
Okay.
Where I was the assistant plant manager.
Okay. Okay.
And eventually, after another year there, I moved. That's when they moved me back to a Missouri plant.
Uh huh.
Well, eventually, I became the factory manager.
Okay.
And I ran the factories at that factory for 4 years.
Gotcha.
So at the end of that 4 years, my time was up, and they moved me back to St. Louis.
Wow.
As in the human resources department, as I became a vice president of human resources.
So you just stayed busy.
I stayed busy for 20, 30 years.
Stayed busy 20, 30 years, man.
Yeah.
I mean, and now you get to, you're on the golf course. You get to do what you love. Mm-hmm. How does it feel being able to lay the foundation that you've laid?
Well, it feels real good, particularly when I went back to work here in Henry County.
Okay.
I took a job with the juvenile court.
Okay. Okay.
For 10 years. So 10 of the years I've been here from 08 to more than 10, 12 years. To 2020, I practiced law in the juvenile court.
Okay. Okay.
So I was representing parents who were about to have their children taken from them because of something that they've done. They screwed up in some way. Maybe they use drugs,
Okay.
or maybe they are alcoholics, or
Okay.
maybe they're homeless, or whatever the reason. The court was stepping in, taking their children from them.
Right.
And my job was then to try to defend those parents so that they could keep their children.
And you growing up in, I remember, back in part one, you talked about how you grew up in a 2-parent home and the value of that.
Right.
Well, how did that correlate to working in the juvenile system, seeing these broken homes developing? Because it has to be a passion there,
Right.
Not everybody's innocent and not everybody's guilty.
Right.
So where did you see that passion and that loop to say, helping these families stay together, the value of that?
Yeah. In fact, one judge told me one time I was too passionate.
Okay.
He told me, Mr. Mays, you are too passionate about this. And I guess he was trying to tell me, look, you're a public defender. You don't need to be that serious, But I was serious about it. And one particular judge didn't like that.
Okay.
So, but it meant a lot to me because I know what it means for a child to be with their parents.
Right.
So, that's nothing more important than that.
Right.
And the judges, some judges, they realized that too. They try to
Okay.
keep parents together, but there were times when you just couldn't keep them together.
Right.
Because the parent was just out of their head on drugs or
Okay.
something like that, where they just couldn't keep them. But most of the time, we were fighting to keep those families together.
To keep those families together.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's very important.
That's a big thing.
Yeah. And boys particularly, they need to be with their dads.
Right.
They need to be with their dads. And I know women have been successful
Yes.
raising boys, but I believe sometimes that could be an exception.
Right.
That a man needs to be involved, particularly with teenage boys.
Well, absolutely, because we see, let's take a look at Deion Sanders,
Right.
LeBron James.
Right.
Raising their kids,
Right.
being able to coach their kids and play alongside their kids. And I know they're superstars,
Right.
but at least we have a public display of example of black fathers being in the home or black fathers being active
Right.
in the kid's life,
Right.
And I think that plays a detrimental effect on the child.
Right.
I think a lot of times the media has created an avenue to say these are deadbeat dads.
Yes.
But in reality, we know that we have more bitter baby mothers than we have deadbeat dads, because all I see is African American men saying, hey, I want to be in my child's life.
Right.
I'm pretty sure you've seen the cases,
Right.
So I'm an advocate for that. I'm an advocate for Fathers Have Rights to initiative.
Right.
And supporting that.
And in Georgia, there are ways that a father can do that, but it's not easy.
Yes.
You have to go in and try to legitimate the child in Georgia. Georgia is the only state in the country that requires you to legitimate the child in order for the child to become your legal child.
Wow.
The other states, if you are on the birth certificate, basically,
Okay.
and you tell the judge, that's my child, I'm the legal father, okay, that's fine. But in Georgia, they make you prove it.
Yes.
They make you prove it. If you really want to be the father of this child, then you're going to have to come to court and go through that entire process of legitimation in order to become the father.
And why and I can get that because it's a lot of different things, and I won't get into the legal aspect of that, but why do you think Georgia is lagging behind on that and giving fathers a hard time? Because it's a lot of fathers out here that are going through the court system that are like, man,
Yeah.
I'm spending money to do the simplest things. You
Right.
know what I mean?
Right, they
Yeah.
make you prove it. They make you prove it. That's the way I look at it.
Okay.
If you really want to be a dad, you'll go through that legitimation process.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
It tells you whether you really want to be a dad or not.
Yeah.
And if you don't really want to be one, you won't go through the process. It's like joining a fraternity, those of us who belong to fraternities.
Yes. Yes.
If you want to be in this frat,
Yes.
you're going to have to prove it.
You're gonna have to prove it. You're
You
gonna have
don't
to.
let anybody in here.
No. All right. Celebrate before we wrap this up. Celebrating 50 years, serving our community, serving the peoples, being an advocate for change. Any last thing you would like to share with our audience before we go wrap this thing up? Where can they get the books, and how? Tell us where we can get the books, and any last words you would like to share with us.
The Long Journey Home, you can get that through Amazon. I hope you will get it. It's an interesting book. The other ones have not been published yet. In terms of a message to young people, It's everything else. If you want to be somebody, if you really want to do the right thing, it's going to take some work. And
Yes.
so I'm recommending that if you don't want to do the work, don't do this because this is going to take work. But I recommend the law to young people, and I hope that more young people will come into it.
Man, we want to thank you for taking out the time. Thank you for allowing us to come in your home, gather your story. I'm pretty sure we're going to be back talking about the book because I want to talk about that long journey home. But most importantly, I was glad we was able to get this story so we could share it with our community and share the value because I learned so many things and you dropped so many nuggets about things I didn't even know. So thank you for taking the time out, Attorney Mays. We appreciate you.
All right, and thank you for inviting us.
Thank you. You guys, thank you for tuning in. Game Changers Magazine, Game Changers Media Network, Voices of the Village podcast, Attorney James Mays, 50 years providing legal aid to the community, the people in this great state of Georgia. You guys, thank you for tuning in. Ease up.
And equality. Now the world they will see.